Welcome to the Aerospace Executive Podcast, featuring in-depth conversations with executives, leaders, influencers, and journalists in this dynamic, high-stakes industry. Hosted by Craig Picken, founder of North Star Group, the boutique executive search firm for the aerospace industry. You'll learn how top aerospace executives are developing their people, competing for talent, overcoming challenges, and adjusting to industry trends to drive growth and profits. And now, let's join your host, Craig Picken.
Hey, welcome to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. As always, I'm Craig Picken. Hey, today I've got Samir Mehta with us. Sam is the president of the now Collins Aerospace Mechanical Systems division. He's a gentleman and executive I've known for about 10 years. He joined Mechanical Systems from Sikorsky, where he ran defense programs. Sam's got a great background, which started as a legal counsel for Otis Elevator. He rose through the ranks through Sikorsky and joined UTAS about 18 months ago in his current role. So, hey, Sam, how are you?
Hey, Craig, how you doing? Listen, I appreciate you taking the time to have me on. You mentioned, wow, it's been 10 years. We've worked together. We've known each other. So time flies, I guess, when you're having fun. But certainly just want to, I know we're going to talk a little bit here. I just wanted to thank you for your friendship and all the help that you've provided us over the past 10 years or so.
No, it's been a great relationship, and one I've certainly enjoyed. So all good. Hey, so obviously big news with it's not really news now, but it's still fresh in everybody's mind. Rockwell Collins and United Technologies Aerospace Systems, you're merged now.
Yeah,
how's that integration coming?
Yeah, it's been going well. You mentioned the freshest, the paint is still drying and some of the signage, right, for Collins Aerospace. So, but we're well into execution mode. And I have to say, Craig, I think, I've been around, especially in this industry, in aerospace and defense. We've had some good tie-ups between companies, and we've had some that I know have been troubled over time, elsewhere in the industry. I have to say, this coming together of the Heritage, United Technologies Aerospace, and and Rockwell Collins has been really positive. The two companies really have a like-mindedness with regard to some of their priorities. Focusing on customers, focusing on innovation, focusing on moving the aerospace industry forward. I think both companies have like-minded leadership, and I think ultimately that's what's made a difference so far. We've done a good job, I think, between the two companies of making sure that we have an integrated leadership team. So roughly half of our senior leadership team is made up of legacy Rockwell Collins folks, the other half legacy United Technologies Aerospace folks. And what's great about it is I can say, 5-6 months into this, we all wear Collins Aerospace badges, which means any given time, Craig, you walk into a room and you can't really tell who's from what legacy company or heritage company anymore. And so to me, that's the real mark of whether or not it's something's been successful, is whether or not you can get the people and the cultures to sort of work together and meld. And that's been happening. So it's been, you can imagine, it's a monumental change. It's a lot of change to be able to manage in a relatively short period of time. But I think the leadership under Kelly and Dave's leadership, Kelly Ortberg and Dave Gitlin, I think under their leadership, and frankly, we're kind of in a great time in aerospace and boom in aerospace. So some of this is we just got, good timing with a great environment around us. Everyone's head down taking care of the customers and making sure we build a better Collins Aerospace, for the future. So it's exciting. I think the integration has gone very, very well.
What do you think? Obviously, so UTAS and Goodrich. UTAS was formed between UTC and then Goodrich, and now Rockwell Collins. What's obviously a lot of bigger is better mentality out there. Boeing can say the same as they're swallowing up a lot of companies with Boeing Global Services. Is that just going to be the trend? Do you think a little bit? Cost of capital and the barriers to entry are so high that the bigger players are going to kind of need to continue to get a little bigger to keep the technology moving forward.
Yeah, I think that could be the case, Craig. I think I think there's a few things that play into, you mentioned the trend. I'll call it consolidation, especially of sort of tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers to the OEMs. I think there's a few trends that probably feed that. The first being that I think customers are expecting more system type solutions, right? So it's not anymore you give us a bunch of parts, we'll figure out how to integrate them and work them together. Customers are looking for kind of a complete package, and so companies like ours, we don't just focus on delivering a component to a customer. Sometimes that is the nature of our business; it gets transactional. But more and more, the trend over the last decade and a half has been, delivering an entire, for instance, air management system, an entire actuation system. And those kinds of systems, not even subsystems, but purely tier 1 systems on an aircraft require a lot of integration. Previously, that integration had to take place between a lot of different companies, right? And then who takes the lead, non-disclosure agreements, intellectual property. Mm-hmm. I think having a lot of that capability under one roof not only eases some of the integration of these components into a system, but those things I just mentioned, like intellectual property and who takes the lead, and all those things kind of go away, and we can focus on the task at hand. So I think that's a huge trend, is sort of the expectation of our customers.
Yep. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think about before Collins Aerospace, but to see Gulfstream aircraft with the 500 and the 600, and Gulfstream, when I was there, had been married to Rolls-Royce for years and years and years and years, and now the new aircraft have the Pratt & Whitney engines on them. And
you mentioned, Craig, about the cost of capital, of investment, and those, and that's absolutely the case as well. I mean, I think that's another trend, which is, our customers, and frankly, in the civil space, the flying public, I think in the military space, our end customers, whether it be full mission capability, mission readiness, mission completion, their expectations are more and more that the prime contractors expect us to make more of our own investment, right?
Right.
So when there's a new development program going on for aircraft, whether it's rotorcraft or fixed wing, whether it's military, civil, even the U.S. government, there's an expectation that we're willing to invest, right, in that venture. And in order to be able to make some of those really significant investments up front, it requires a bit of scale, right? You have to be able to have businesses that are in all different phases of the aerospace cycle all at once, so you can fund some of your cash and capital requirements, so that we can make, what is, no matter what we call it, at the end of the day in aerospace, some of these end up being big bets.
Yep. Well, yeah, I mean, it's nice when you can go to an airframer and say, hey, look, yeah, we can provide you engines, and we can provide you, cockpit systems, and we can provide you, this stuff in the fuel systems and a little bit of everything, and you help them put it together. And the risk sharing model, I don't think is going to go away anytime soon. So, it's billions of dollars to develop new technology,
right?
And everybody's got to be working together. But it's fun to watch. So you've got mechanical systems. What's happening in your world? What's going on with the mechanical systems side? Where's the technology all going?
Yeah, so a little bit about mechanical systems, Craig. It's it's pretty unique in the sense that it's really a portfolio type business that I have. So think about it really as a portfolio of the actuation business, and again, for military and civil, fixed wing and rotorcraft, the landing gear business, the wheels and brakes business. I have a hoist and winch business, which is purely rotorcraft, and I have propeller cockpit systems, right, which is exactly what it sounds like, side stick units all the way to propellers on a very important turboprop market that we still service. So it's a number of different companies, mostly legacy Goodrich companies, that we've woven together in mechanical systems. And so it's kind of interesting. We play in very, very different markets and regions around the world. Even geographically, we're very dispersed. I have about 10,000 people who report to mechanical systems in our companies, and 2/3 of those are actually outside of the U.S. I think we're by far, within Collins Aerospace, the most internationally based, both from a a population of our employees and our factories, but also the customers that we have. We have a lot of international outside the U.S. sales. So it's unique from a couple of perspectives. The place where we're spending a lot of our investment in, sort of looking forward into the world is it's consistent with the theme of Collins Aerospace, which is, connectivity, right? We mentioned before customers' expectations about the flying public's expectations, for instance, when they get on an aircraft, and they have the belief and the expectation, right, that all the components on the aircraft are going to work together for their benefit. Well, if we're being honest with ourselves, Craig, that's still a phenomenon that all of us in the industry aspire to. We're not there yet, right? A lot of times there's still highly federated systems. When you can get a connected system, so for instance, when you have the landing gear being able to sense when it needs to be serviced, when you have actuators on the aircraft that can provide detailed information on how they're performing on takeoff and landing, we can do a few things. Most importantly, we can significantly reduce the operating costs of the aircraft for our customers. So connected systems allows us to get real-time information while the aircraft is still in the air, so that, for instance, a ground crew can prepare to either do maintenance, have a spare part ready, so we can reduce the turnaround time in the aircraft, increase the efficiency, and again, lower the operating costs. So that's just one application on PHM. What's really exciting about Collins Aerospace in general, and we're certainly a part of this in mechanical systems, Craig, is we're taking even a broader look than that. We're taking a look at the aircraft ecosystem, the flying ecosystem, the aviation ecosystem. Through this acquisition, we have companies that operate and are leaders in areas like air-to-ground communication, not only for the pilots but also for the passengers on the plane. So increasing that connectivity. How many times you get on an aircraft now and they have a little Wi-Fi sign and, it works great most of the time, doesn't work sometimes, not always on international flights. I think expectations of the flying public and our customers is that they be connected all times, and we play an integral role with that with some of the companies that form Collins Aerospace. I think secondly, the ecosystem of flying includes things like making sure that we have the right kind of visualization identification practices so that when you come to the airport, we can create an ecosystem whereby you don't need to have a boarding pass, right? Your face, your retinal scan could be your identification to get on an airplane, to get through security. I don't know anyone who I speak to that says that they wouldn't like a more efficient process, safe, obviously, but efficient process in getting through the airport. So we have systems and processes now in the company and some technology that has not only enabled that, but we'll be launching some pilot programs in various airports soon. We'll be able to demonstrate that to the flying public. So everything from what you do on the ground to prepare for a flight when you get on the aircraft, all the way through the flight to the time that you land and you depart, we'll have a big role to play in that entire ecosystem. And again, it's these technologies that we've acquired and companies that we've acquired through the years that allow us to build that. And again, in mechanical systems, you can't take off or land without a landing gear. You have to make sure that the aircraft has the braking power necessary. Actuations allow the aircraft to be controlled in flight. I can go on and on. Our cargo systems business allows us to transport baggage carefully, which everyone wants. So we play an integral role in every element of that.
Right. No, that's pretty cool. 10,000 people, 2/3 of which are elsewhere outside the U.S. So you're racking up a lot of frequent flyer miles, but that's keeping a lot of wheels on a lot of different buses. How are you managing that? What kind of challenges are you seeing?
It is. It's kind of interesting. And you're right about the frequent flyer miles. I think, when I say the flying public, I guess I can include myself in that now as a significant member of the flying public. We use technology where we can from a communication standpoint. So things like video conferencing, we embrace. But obviously there are also times whether it comes to customers or dealing with your own folks in various facilities, there's nothing that substitutes for from face to face. So myself and my leadership team make it a point. We have a headquarters here in Charlotte. We joke about the amount of time we spend here. I often remark I come back and have to clear the cobwebs from my office. So we spend a lot of time on our road making sure that, everyone kind of understands the main objectives of our organizations, right? The customer focus, no matter what product you service, no matter what product you manufacture, no matter what customer, or no matter what segment we play in, there are a few things that have to hold true, right? We have number one obligation is to make sure that we have the highest level of customer sensitivity, customer support, and customer focus, right? And that, again, it doesn't matter if you're sitting in a facility and making propellers in Figeac, France, or if you're making valves in our facility in Malaysia, right? You have to have that kind of focus on who's my customer, what are the customer's expectations, and what can I do to meet them. Secondly, obviously, we have financial requirements we have to meet, right? We have shareholders who invested in United Technology, and they expect a return on their investment. So we make our commitments to our shareholders, and we keep those. And again, that's across the board. That doesn't necessarily change from region to region or culture to culture. The challenge can be there are some external events that have a higher impact. So, for instance, one of my largest facilities, I have the largest facilities in Collins Aerospace in the UK, our Wolverhampton facilities, which is headquarters for actuation. So for me, when I see things like the Brexit debate, it not only becomes, hey, that's interesting and how it may affect my customers, that could have a significant impact on the way we operate in the UK, right? With 1,100 of my folks and hundreds of millions of dollars of sales coming out of that facility. So for us, we have to prepare for those. And that's a kind of a unique challenge, right? I don't have to do that with the factories that I have in Jamestown, North Dakota that makes cargo, for instance.
Right.
So we have to have contingency plans, buffer stock, customer communication plans. How are we preparing for Brexit? With obviously all the unknowns that come along with the timing and the impact of Brexit. So that's kind of some unique challenges that we face in the international environment. I'd also say, we have to just consistently make sure that we're sensitive to the fact that we have such a large international base. I joke, something as simple as a staff meeting that I have, and I have my leadership team all around the world. We have to be very careful in how we schedule these things so that we get people's maximum participation, and frankly, we don't inconvenience them too much. If I have a 3:00 staff meeting, that doesn't necessarily mean, on a Friday afternoon, that doesn't necessarily mean great things for my leadership in the UK and France, right? So likewise, I have a facility hoisting winches out in Brea, California, which is in Pacific Standard Time. So it means that you have to sort of be very mindful of when you're doing things. You have to be mindful about the different cultures in which you're operating. But at the end of the day, we keep our 2-3 priorities ahead of us, and we all sign up to them, and those are universal. The customer focus makes sense no matter what region, what time zone, what culture. That's for us, that's foundational for Collins Aerospace.
Yeah, no, I got. Well, hey, look, just like you said, the Brexit thing. We as the industry watch it pretty close, and a lot of people are like, yeah, it's Brexit. And it's like, no, it's really a big deal.
Right.
Depending on what happens, and it's gonna cost people a lot of money, or it's gonna make them a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not just. Craig, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not just a news story to us, right? These are. This affects hundreds of customers that are counting on us. This affects thousands of employees that are counting on us, right, to be able to navigate through this gracefully. Obviously, there's hundreds of millions of dollars of sales on the line here from a shareholder standpoint. So we're not just sort of mild, interested observers of what happens in Brexit. We actually have to go and make decisions based upon how we're going to operate, what we're going to do differently with something which is very, very unpredictable out there. Yeah,
no, it's like a dark cloud hanging over. Right now it's an economic dark cloud hanging over the UK.
Yep.
And be very careful what you ask for.
Right.
Type of scenario. So we'll see. Hey, it's a lot of cool programs coming down the pike. I know you're pretty involved in future vertical lift. You got some new hoist technology out there for helicopters. We've got supersonic business jets rolling down the pike. What are some of the neater programs that you see on your radar?
So, Craig, with my history and my background and my previous, almost 20 years at Sikorsky, I'd be remiss if you mentioned future programs, exciting programs, if we didn't talk about future vertical lift.
Right.
And so, I think we're on the cusp of sort of generational technological change in rotorcraft, and rotorcraft with some refinements and obviously with some advancements in technology. The concept of most helicopters that are flying in the world today hasn't changed much, really, since the time of Igor Sikorsky, right? Single man rotor, tail rotor. And again, there's been some variation on that, but nothing, incredibly significant. I think future vertical lift is a game changer for rotorcraft. And so not only the missions that they can compete, but the technologies that will have to be brought to bear to be able to fly with, speed, a combination of speed, range, autonomy, all those things that are sort of embodied by the future vertical lift program. So, our question in mechanical systems here becomes, with those kinds of increased capabilities on the horizon, what can our products do differently? What can our products do better? You mentioned hoists. We're in the process of, we've initiated the process of certification of something called Pegasus, which is the real first breakthrough advancement on hoist technology in the last 40 years. It'll allow our customers to be able to spend 40 to 50% less dollars being able to maintain the hoist because of a modular design that allows you to be able to switch out components on the hoist without sending the whole hoist back to us. It'll provide much more efficient and safe operation during hoist. It's got single point payout, which means it will reduce things like oscillation. I mean, I can go on, but essentially, as the aircraft evolves and as future vertical lift evolves, the life-saving mission that goes along with the hoist, that frankly the helicopter is hard to be able to do without a hoist, will become an extension, right, of that life-saving mission, not just a component on the aircraft. And we're working very closely with the rotorcraft manufacturers to understand kind of what they're developing so we can be in synchronization in lockstep. Similarly, actuation technology, if you look at all of the offerings, really, on future vertical lift that the OEMs have teased and put out there and currently as far as in flight tests, they all require an advanced degree of actuation technology, right? There's more large exposed moving parts on those to both increase the speed, but most importantly, increase the maneuverability of these aircraft. So, that tests our ability in my actuation business to be able to make things like small compound motors, right? So you take up less space and weight and geography on the aircraft, but you provide better capability and sometimes under very adverse conditions, right, where these aircraft fly. So that's just a couple of the examples. Thankfully, whether it's sonic, supersonic, hypersonic, whether it's ETOL type aircraft, they haven't made an aircraft yet that doesn't need some kind of landing gear.
Yeah.
So, in our landing gear and our landing systems business, at some point, it's going to be important for that aircraft to come down to a graceful landing and for able to maneuver or taxi on some sort of runway. At some point. And so, our wheels and brakes and landing gears business, some of the folks, that we have working on, some of the best and brightest folks that we have in the company are working on next generation technologies. Brake wear. How do you make a brake? We have a Duracar brake pad right now. How do you make a brake that works 3-4 times longer than the current brake technology? Reduces maintenance costs, increases the maneuverability of the aircraft on the ground. I mean, again, all things that are very, very consistent with where we see the OEMs going and where we see the platforms going.
Do you think that obviously one of the goals is making systems better and better, but there's a tremendous amount of revenue that comes to y'all in the form of aftermarket. How do you see your aftermarket developing as new technologies come in line? You obviously have to train you've got some people you outsource to. How are you training your suppliers to meet the new tech demand to support your aftermarket?
I think for us, it becomes about using data, and I think that's kind of the linchpin, frankly. Craig, our customers more and more, if you take a look at, for instance, we have a program, a cost per landing program, associated with our wheels and brakes business. So 70% of our customers opt to sign contracts with us where they don't take the wheels and brakes and then exchange them and pay a transaction fee or do an outright sale of wheel and brakes. They simply pay us every time they land an aircraft. And if anything happens during that landing, if eventually the wheels and brakes they wear, they need replacement, that's included in the fee of whatever they paid us. So think about it almost like a power by the hour type of program, but for landing gear, right? So that's the revenue, right? So that's my revenue stream coming in. What's great about that is, they have a fixed sort of expected cost based upon the number of takeoff and landings. It's very predictable for them. My profit opportunity on that is how quickly I can get those wheels and brakes back to them, which aligns with their goals, but also how can I make that brake last longer? How can I become more efficient repair and overhaul? So how can I reduce my costs associated with that? So there's a lot of, in the aftermarket, especially in the support world, there's a lot of places where you can really line up incentives, right? Less downtime, more flying is better for all of us, right? Fixing a customer's ability to be able to budget is better for us, more predictable stream of revenue for us. And then it allows us to focus where we're good on cost and efficiency, right, to make sure that we get a healthy return or at least the expected return on the aftermarket. For our suppliers, what it means for them is they have to play in this data discussion, right? We don't invent everything that goes on the aircraft. And while we're, domain expertise at the system level, it doesn't necessarily hold true for every component that we acquire from a supplier. They're obviously they have the domain knowledge there. So for them, it means for us, if you want to be a partner long-term with Collins, with not only Mechanical Systems, but I'll say Collins Aerospace overall, we want to make sure that you are aligned with us in our goal to be able to use data and information that comes off the aircraft to make your subcomponent better, right? It's got to last longer. It's got to be more durable. It's got a higher sense of quality to it. And you have to be willing to sort of make those investments. And if that's the case, then we'll get the right long-term agreements with you. And these 40, 50, 60-year revenue streams, right, that get produced in the aftermarket that are so vital for us and our ability to be able to reinvest in our capabilities and innovation, they'll have a healthy share of that as well.
Yep, I got it. So obviously technology, the one thing that, it's interesting, the technology is changing rapidly. Every operator out there is complaining right now that, it's very, very hard to find A&P mechanics. It's very, very hard to find pilots. And I'm hearing a lot of companies saying they're challenged right now to find the technical skills in engineering and, business executives to get the business forward. Don't know what you guys are seeing, but what do we need to be doing to, where do we need to be going to make sure that we've got the right skill sets, 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah, I think, frankly, it's the biggest challenge that we face. And I don't think it's unique to Collins Aerospace. I think it's, as you mentioned, Greg, as you inferred, I think it's an industry challenge. And as you know, I've been kind of in the aerospace game for 20 plus years. I remember even 15, 20 years from ago, after being recruited by my company, to go out back into colleges and talk about aerospace and get people excited and get them to want to come to aerospace. Frankly, it wasn't that hard. You'd go to these conferences, you'd set up, and even if they weren't aerospace conferences, you'd sit there, you put your model airplane out, your model helicopter, your model cockpit, whatever the case may be, and you had an insurance company next to you trying to recruit, right? And so you'd sit there and say, boy, this is easy. It's like shooting fish in a barrel to get people interested in this. And then you start seeing the turn, right? When you go to those conferences, especially the technical ones, right? National Society of Black Engineers and all these other great, venues that we have for recruiting. And then one year I looked up and I noticed that we were sandwiched in between like Apple and Google, right? And I'm thinking to myself, we're not necessarily just the coolest folks on the block anymore. Right. And so a lot of the top technical talent now starts getting peeled off and going to some other areas. And good for them. But the one thing we know that we can't compete with sometimes, we don't say, hey, come work for Collins Aerospace. You'll be able to work for us for 2 or 3 years. You'll get some stock options and you'll find yourself, waking up with $1 million in a few years. Nobody gets into aerospace with that kind of intention. Certainly not working for a big company with that kind of intention. So what we've been doing is we've been focusing a little bit more on the mission for what we do. I find young people now want to be more aligned with the mission. So it's not necessarily just about the job. Okay, here's what you're going to do when you come in every day. You turn on your computer, or you pick up your tools from the tool crib, and you're going to work on the aircraft. Here's really, more importantly, here's the impact of what you do on the world, right? There's, 3/4 of the world's population has never been on an airplane. You're going to help connect them, right? You're going to help them. You're going to help their ability to be able to make connections and see the world and see relatives and do what they want to do. Our military mission, obviously the message there is even clearer, right? What you're doing is helping protecting the freedom of ourselves, our country, and our allies, right? And there's a direct link to what you're doing in the military space, military aviation, be able to support that. So we've learned that, yes, we have to talk about the job skills. Yes, we have to talk about the salary, the compensation, the steadiness of the work, the exciting technical challenges, but we have to focus on the mission and making sure that we tell people that, while there's a lot of great things out there, you can go to hedge fund and make a lot of money, and that's great. You have to ask yourself, what's the mission? I don't think in aviation and defense, luckily we're at a place where the mission is very visible, it's very viable, it's not going to go anywhere in the future. So we just need to be able to convince our young people that this is a great area to be in.
Yeah, and that's a really common theme. I've talked to a couple executives, and they said the same thing. Everybody today wants to know what they're doing will be for a good cause. It's not just, hey, we're developing AI for AI's sake. It's, what's the purpose? What's the purpose of what I'm doing, and how can I benefit the world from it? And it just seems like that's the mindset of the generations coming up.
And I will tell you, Craig, on the talent front as well, you're right. We're seeing a shortage of, there's not, in my mind, certainly enough folks that are A&P mechanics or interested in becoming A&P mechanics. And I guess that's not like unlike the trend that we see in some of the other trades. But even on the technical and the engineering side, right, we're just not producing necessarily enough engineers in parts of the world where we have a large aerospace of concentration companies. And so there's a couple things we're doing there. Number one, we're broadening the net, right? So for instance, we have, a couple thousand engineers in Bangalore, right? India does not have a shortage of folks that are interested in becoming engineers. And so we're melding together the capabilities that they have and they bring to bear so that we make them part of, our extended engineering community, whether they're outsourced or, frankly, more and more insourced and working for our company. So we have great pockets and regions around the world where we can still sort of leverage the interest in technical talent and make that a part of our community. The second thing that we're doing, and to me this is the one that I'm most passionate about, is we need to get more women and more girls at a younger age and women in later stages much more interested in this industry. And certainly I'll call it the technical aspects of this industry. And when I say technical, I mean more women pilots, more women mechanics, more women engineers, more women CEOs, business leaders, more women P&L leaders. Largely aerospace and defense has managed to be able to progress as far as it has, largely by relying upon, the talents that are available in roughly 50% of the world's population. And I'm not to say there weren't outliers and there weren't women who contributed greatly to aviation, they have. But we as a community have greatly undervalued, right, the contribution that girls early on and then women later on can make in our industry. So I'm very passionate about the programs that we have, not only in the U.S., but around the world, to get more young girls, and I'm talking about K through 5, K through 8, interested in pursuing aerospace and defense, not only as an interest, but as a profession. And once we harness that energy and that interest, I think all the things that we talk about now with some of the, not enough people being interested in our industry, I think all of that will go away. And, it's urgent. As you mentioned, we have to start now. We have to start young to make sure that we get them interested and that we keep hold their interest in the educational process.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking just for our, just for our own health and well-being as an industry moving forward. It's almost like we got to create some sort of public-private partnerships and literally reach into the schools and talk about, hey, look, I sat on a board in North Carolina that governor at the time, Purdue, hosted. How do we get more aerospace jobs in Carolina? And the conclusion we all came to was literally, we got to be in the schools at very young ages, talking about what a cool industry we have, and it's good pay, it's good skills, it's good pay, it's fun, it's cool. It's technical. There's a lot of advance moving forward, but we got to, like you said, we got to be in it 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade promoting it.
I tell people, Craig, I wouldn't trade my 25 years in aerospace. I wouldn't trade that to be in any other industry, just because of the experiences that exposes you to, right? Some of the customers, some of the military customers especially, it's tangible. You can go to the airport and look what we work on. You can turn on the TV, you can look what we work on, right? You can see a service member walking down the street, and chances are that they've been impacted or affected by what you've been able to do. And there's not a lot left in this world where you can be, there's not a lot of other industries, because we've become so digital, where that tangible kind of connection is there. And it's hard to describe. I think we have to do a better job of describing it to young people. But that's a huge sense of accomplishment and pride. And so I think if we just continue to, put that message home, and again, the public-private partnerships, getting them early in school, and not only in the U.S., but around the world, getting to kids early in school and being able to describe the benefits that we've all gotten, and all the, honestly, all the fulfillment that we've all gotten from working in this industry, and being very, very direct about the fact that they have that same potential, that they have that same opportunity. You mentioned this isn't an industry that's going anywhere anytime soon. I think we're still a long way from teleporting. So until that's the case, this is going to be a great, viable, generational type of industry for people to work in.
The best is yet to come, for sure.
I think so.
Hey, thanks for coming on today. I know you got a lot of stuff going on in a lot of different time zones, and to block 45 minutes off for this is fantastic and much appreciated.
Greg,
thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I look forward to meeting up again soon.
And I'll take you up on that golf game in Charlotte next time I see you.
Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Sam. Talk soon.